Hello, hello, and welcome to another Rise Up CX Talks. This is the podcast where we discuss ideas and strategies on how to transform experience into business growth. I am your host, Camila Ferreira, an award winning CX leader, an author of Long Live CX, available on Amazon, and an international speaker. And today we are going to discuss how CS, customer success, and business develop can work to win. And in order to join this conversation, I have two friends from LinkedIn, Kathleen Rouse and Jen Mingo. So, ladies, please join this online stage and introduce yourself.
Excellent. Thank you. So, Jen Mingo, I'm very excited to be here. I've spent the last almost 30 years in enterprise software and consulting. And this topic is very near and dear to my heart because whether through consulting or being at a company, I think the biggest indicator of success is this alignment between how you go to market and how you deliver value for your customers. So I'm very excited to talk about this with you and Kathleen.
Wonderful.
Wonderful. Hello, everyone. I'm glad to be back with Jen and Camila today. My name is Kathleen Rouse. I'm the founder and principal of Cultivate CX, where I work with companies valued at $1 billion or more, typically in the software space. And I take my more than 20 years of experience leading customer experience teams to drive strategies around implementing technology, scalable processes, and talent development strategies to boost growth, retention, and performance. So this conversation is also very near and dear to my heart because when done very well, I think that business development and customer success can drive tremendous value for our customers and therefore growth for our companies.
Amazing. Wow. Two fantastic women here today. And I can't wait to see how much we're going to share with our audience and learn from each other. And with no further ado, I want to start this conversation by hitting a very, I would say, heated topic, which is alignment versus silos. We all know, we all had been in organizations, either as an employee, as our consultants, and we know that silos exist and they are big blockers for success and for business growth. So, Jen, let's start with you. So, what is the biggest friction point you had seen between business development and CS teams? CS being success or support. So, those, as you said, they go to market and then kind of how to take care of those customers. And how do you fix them? Because this podcast is about giving our audience some ideas and strategies to fix the main problems that we face.
Yes, no, great question. I think the biggest issues that I've seen in the companies that have really struggled is customers come to a company because that company is solving a problem that they have. And if they're marketed to and sold to solve a specific problem, then they expect once they purchase the product to work with the success organization and actually solve that problem and continue to grow with the company as the company expands and creates new features and capabilities. If there's a disconnect between those two and the customer thinks they're buying a product that solves a problem, but then they get in and the product, in fact, does not solve that problem, and success is trying to figure out how to reshape how the customer looks and uses the platform, there's friction. Right? You have misaligned expectations. You have a lot of overhead in making sure that now how do we make sure that we solve the problem that the customer had? And it becomes a very stressful process, both for the customer and the success organization. And so when you break down those silos and you understand end to end, all the way from marketing through the sales motion, through the delivery, the problems you're solving and how you're going to solve those, it just goes a lot faster and a lot smoother. And it allows you to run a much leaner organization because you don't have to have humans closing the gap that is creating those silos. You have this end-to-end journey for the customer. And I think where that also sets you up to be successful is once you solve that first problem, as your product expands, success can then expand the footprint of the product within the customer. And so now the customer is growing with you. And that doesn't mean that you may not pivot a little bit as a company, but having that alignment so there are no surprises on the back end in your success org to be successful as the product pivots is just really, really important. And so, from a customer expectations, from a frictionless experience and no surprises, that alignment becomes paramount so that your customer can really thrive and that the organization can thrive together.
I love that, Jen. I'd like to weigh in here as well. I think as you mentioned, the biggest disconnect happens when business development and customer success or customer experience don't see themselves as part of one growth team. Yeah. And I think that goes back to a few very fundamental things. Excuse me. First, as leaders, we really need to build genuine peer partnerships with our counterparts. So from a CS perspective, we build those relationships with our sales counterparts and vice versa. So trust has to be built from the top. And that actually starts with, you mentioned that we're solving a problem. And so, you need to start by helping each other speak the same language. And so that goes to, number one, what is the ultimate goal? What are we driving towards? And that really means what's the problem we're trying to solve for our customers and how does that translate to revenue and growth for the company? And that also means that we are, we even do sales training or the sales methodology training and really understanding the value our products deliver to the clients across the entire organization. So understanding the value that we're delivering to our customers is not just something that the sales organization needs to know, it's also what the CS organization needs to know, and especially as our products evolve. And that also means that we understand how we're unlocking growth opportunities, both from business development as well as from CS, and how we can each drive value. From the customer success perspective, how are we uncovering success stories to enable new deals? How are we identifying customer intel and renewal insights to uncover expansion opportunities? And then how are we connecting the dots with revenue operations or RevOps team to display customer health, renewal timelines, upsell potential, for shared forecasting? I think all of that goes together.
Yeah, I love it. I just ask myself and ask my clients, what if we were all part of just one department?
Yeah.
Right? I think it's a good way for us to start thinking and approaching silos and those department silos differently. What if it was just one team? Yeah. Would we behave differently? I would think so. Yeah. Right? So let's start.
Yeah, and I think you're right. And if we think of ourselves all on the customer's team, right, and service to their whole journey, which is what this is about, that's how you become that one team. And I think you hit on it, Kathleen, like having that North Star, which is our customer is wildly successful and set up to grow with us, and we grow with them. And so when you take that customer back mindset, it kind of automatically breaks down the silos that you have, because it's like, is this going to make my customer more successful? Are we setting them up to be the hero of their own story? Like, how do we create those moments where, it isn't just about the execution of getting them on the platform, getting them to buy the platform, getting them on the platform. It's actually getting them to be successful with it. And that's when you really see the growth.
Oh, absolutely. And speaking of growth, one of the exercises that we do is forecasting that growth and what are the things or the initiatives, the programs, the projects that we're going to have to put in place to deliver that forecast. So Kathleen, this goes to you. How do you think companies can improve forecasting accuracy when both functions share ownership of results?
Yes. Well, I'll go back to an example of where it didn't work. The forecasting was done in silos. So I was at an organization that will not be named where sales had no visibility into when renewals were due. And at the same time, CS was really not aware of when our counterparts in sales or business development were identifying opportunities. And so that forecasting broke down when we didn't understand growth and renewal cycles, and they weren't clearly aligned, or there just wasn't an understanding of when it was happening. And so on the flip side of when this trust breaks down, we would have situations where we'd have a sales rep closing additional growth opportunities, and then 3 months later the customer took a downsell because they did not have the budget to renew. And so that was just not aligned at all. So I think, it goes back to when you think about forecasting trust, you really have to ensure that leadership is aligned on key forecasting rhythms. When are renewals? It's a very simple understanding. And I say simple, but I've been at many organizations where it's actually very difficult for companies to really understand when is the renewal due. And so you need to, first and foremost, you need to get with your CFO or your RevOps team to really understand what is the source of truth. When are these customers opening their wallets already for renewals? When can we then tie our expansion strategies to those renewal cycles and unlock opportunities to increase that pie and increase the growth opportunities? And it presents, a unified forecast to the executive team. I would challenge all of our leaders to drive a rhythm where our sales and CS leaders are presenting a unified forecast. And it's tied to things that actually drive value for the company and for our shareholders, whether that's net retention rate, utilization, what have you, and not just new bookings or only focused on renewals, right? It needs to be a joint metric that both sides of the business really think about and drive sustainable, profitable growth for the company.
And I think building on that, Kathleen, I think you nailed it, right? It is a unified view of revenue for the company. And this one truly does have to start from the top. Because that's where they need to be able to look at and say, I am running a company, and this organization is dependent on not only our net new customers, but our install base and the growth. And so to have a true view of the health of the business, you have to look at it as one piece of how you're going to plan and grow. And so you can have, at the end of the day, the different organizations looking at their piece of that puzzle, but it all has to roll up holistically. And it comes down to leadership really holding that accountability piece there, and then having those metrics be aligned, right? It isn't just that the sales team has booked revenue and the CS team has retention, because those two inevitably go together for the long-term success of the company. And so at the end of the day, there really is an overall revenue for the company that leadership needs to look at, and that's where it starts. So for me, this truly does start from the top down. And if it doesn't, then it does become challenging, because everybody's chasing their own metrics versus this North Star, which is what is the overall health of our company, driven by the success of our existing customers and our net new customers together collectively.
Oh my God, yes, to absolutely every single word. And what I was thinking here is a renewal of a contract. It starts on the first day of that a customer signed the original contract.
Yes.
That's the mindset that we have to have. And then we're going to have those different departments working in collaboration to see what are the opportunities that we have. How do we help this customer to be more successful? What are the other solutions that we can offer? Not just wait to when the renewal is due for us
Yeah.
to go after this customer and start pitching the renewal, because this is also kind of exhausting and does not kind of a very pleasant for our clients. But it's more like, okay, contract signed. How do I onboard this customer? How do I help? How do I hold the hand of this customer throughout this journey? So I am constantly adding value. And by the time the contract is about to expire or the renewal is approaching, it's a no-brainer for this customer to renew it.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. And it does. I think the other thing that's really important too, and why this is important from the top down to have this holistic view, is sometimes earlier stage companies do pivot, right? As they're looking for product market fit. And if you don't have that alignment and understanding on what that pivot could mean from a renewal perspective, right? You have initial customers who are solving a problem and they bought your product to solve that problem. If that problem is no longer a priority, it doesn't necessarily mean that there is going to be an attrition, but you have to go in eyes wide open on what that means holistically for the success from a revenue-based perspective, and account for that risk on the back end, and maybe then balance that with additional targets on the front end, because now with this new problem, there might be an expanded base of people, your customers you're going after, and that's why you chose to make the pivot. But without that connection, you create an even bigger divide, because now you have a success organization that's renewing on a product that may or may not no longer be a priority. And so that alignment becomes critical as you look at the overall health and what each group is going to be responsible for as the company pivots, because it should never just be one part pivots. It's everybody always needs to be kind of rowing in the same direction.
Oh, love it. Go,
I love
Kathleen.
yes, I love what you brought up there, Jen. It's the pivot may not necessarily be that we're trying to find the market fit, but it could be we just acquired another company.
Yeah.
And now we have this customer base that we believe will benefit from this additional solution that we have added to our product suite.
Yeah.
And now CS, when done right, CS should help identify growth opportunities.
100%.
But I think this goes back to having that unified view of what are we all trying to do here.
Yes.
And it is about uncovering those opportunities for value for the customer to then turn that into growth for the company.
That is so interesting. I'm going to share something, but this morning I was having a meeting with a potential client who has identified an opportunity to start not only delivering on the software side, but also on the consulting, on the coaching with the concepts. So he operates in the finance industry. And I was like, wow, I think this is very interesting, because this person supports very small businesses. And I do know that in small business, they struggle very much with the financial concepts of big organizations. So I told him, I do see a great opportunity for you to expand your business to include this more kind of a educational part of finance. I was like, how are you doing this? It's like, no, I'm hiring people to start selling and kind of approach potential clients. And my first question was, you already have your existing clients.
Yeah.
Why don't you talk to them? Why don't you ask them, what do they think about it? If they see value in it, and start from there. So we don't need to start a business from scratch. You already have such a wealth of information from your existing clients that you can leverage. But that is exactly what you were saying, Jane. Sometimes we got to pivot and we do not take into account the needs of our existing clients, which is gold.
Yes.
Right? But it's speaking of value realization, because one of the things that we as CXers, we normally do is map the customer journey. This is such an important step, not just assuming how we believe the customer will go through the journey with us, but actually mapping and identifying the opportunities, what is working well, what is not. But one thing to have in mind is the concept of value realization.
Yes.
For our customers, as you said, oh, maybe their needs have changed and we need to pivot. We need to be in constant contact with this customer. So What does a complete customer journey look like from deal to value realization?
Yeah. I think it starts with, to your point, it's how they find you, right? How did they come to find your company? And why did they find your company, right? What messaging are you putting out there that helps people understand the value you can bring to their organization? And how do you repeat and get them to even understand that more to the point where they purchase your product, right? That is a big, big, big part of the journey. But then once that happens, how do you then get them to realize that value? And a big part of that is having your success team be a part of the journey before the customer signs on the dotted line, to be in those meetings and understanding what it is that they are really looking for, especially if you have a product that has a variety of capabilities to deliver. What do you want to deliver first? What are they looking to solve first? And that doesn't mean, because some people will be like, okay, well, how do I know when to bring them in? And I think that's a good question. I think it's you partner with your CS organization to understand their bandwidth and capacity to engage. And usually, it's at a latter sales stage where you're pretty confident that the deal is going to close, but early enough so that CS has time to truly understand, how do we prioritize getting them onto this platform? How do we look at the metrics that they need to deliver with this purchase to the organization, and map that out with them? Because it isn't going to look the same for every customer. They're going to have different priorities and different orders. And how do you help them really maximize your product within their organization to deliver those outcomes? And then check in to see if those outcomes are being delivered, right? It's not that it's once you implement, you're done. You are the best person to help them understand the value they can get. And if something does go in a direction that you weren't expecting, or you're not seeing the lift you're hoping, your success organization has run into all of the challenges, right? Because they're working across multiple customers. So you have those quarterly business reviews, you have those shared metrics that you're reviewing, and the problem solving that you do together. And sometimes you can even bring the sales organization in, because they may actually need a higher level of your product or additional capabilities, but you do it with data and you do it with their outcomes in mind. And that's where, to your point, it is a life cycle. It's a full circle. You're never done helping them grow, because as your product and company grows, Kathleen, to your point, whether you acquire a company or you add a new feature set, you want your customer to be able to continue to maximize the value by adopting more and more. And so it's really important all the way from the beginning through that renewal and growth, that everybody's part of that journey.
Yes, I love the points you brought up, Jen. And my lens is, as I mentioned in my initial intro, I typically work with companies that are valued at $1 billion or more. They typically have very large customer install base. And so, there's also the aspect of providing the customer intel in a scalable way. And so that when we have, from the point that the customer finds our company, decides that they want to purchase the solution, and then they onboard and launch, the value, the definition of value is consistent. And so I was working with a client that very well established, but they were launching kind of an emerging technology into the market, which had not really, they were still defining product market fit. And so, having a very clear understanding and clear handoff from sales to implementation and CS was really critical, so that when it came time from the point of the initial kickoff of the implementation to the first, executive business review, the customer's definition of value was consistent. It was known, it was documented, it was tracked. That was really important very early on. And I think, Camila, you mentioned the renewal starts from day one. Asking and you may not come out and ask the customer, would you renew? But understanding why the customer initially purchased our solution is really important. I went through a cadence with a customer recently through, our advisory board work to identify opportunities to just interview, why why did you decide on our solution, and why did you renew? And having those insights was really important, as well as understanding the not so good journey. Why did you churn? Why did you downsell? I think those are important too.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Knowing sometimes, or most of the times, we focus very much on what is not working, but we forget to map what works. And this is as important as understanding what is not working, because the least we want to do is to break what is working to fix something that is not working. Right? Good. But let me shift gears a little bit, because you both mentioned about having this mindset of breaking free from silos from the top leadership, which I can't agree more. But Kathleen, this goes to you. So, what behaviors distinguish organizations that truly operate as one growth team from those that do not?
Yes, I will go back to, a foundational practice, which is so critical for every leader, is collaboration and holding regular joint business reviews with the foundation of data-driven insights and rituals. So what I mean by that is, regularly we should be working with our sales and CS counterparts with the intelligence that our RevOps team provides to us to highlight where this is working well and where this isn't. Our data-driven rituals should be tied around customer health. What are the signals of customer health? Utilization. Is our forecast, is it trending accurately? Are we finding surprises? Are we not forecasting, not forecasting risk and not forecasting growth are equally bad, right? So while everybody loves to be the hero at the end of the quarter, we don't want these surprises where all of a sudden we have $1 million. Where did that come from? We don't know. That is not good, right? So uncovering and making sure that leadership speaks that drumbeat is really important. And I said, speaking the same language. So having a foundation of the same sales methodology, the same techniques and forecasting ritual across the organization is critical. So I would say those three things are, collaboration, regular joint business reviews. So we're both feet is held to the fire. We're speaking the same language, and it's all on the foundation of data.
Yeah. Yeah. And I agree with Kathleen. I think there's so much in an organization when everybody gets very, very busy, right? And time is, one of the biggest challenges people have to keep that alignment. And so to, build on what Kathleen is talking about and some of the initial questions, right? You have to have that shared forecasting point of view from the top. You have to be looking at the success of your business in a consistent way and understanding, Kathleen, to your point, without surprises, how are we looking holistically as a company from a revenue forecasting perspective? And then I think on the backside of that, it's the metrics, right? How are you driving what your team members are striving for? And how do you create that singular North Star around the customer success and prospective customer success, right? So that when people are looking at how do I spend my time, they're motivated to spend it on not only net new, but the current customers together and improving that cycle, constantly improving it, right? To your point, whether it's shared language, solving the same problem, learnings from things that haven't worked well with customers. But it really does start with some of the foundational things we talked about. You have to have a unified view of what that forecast looks like. You have to have a shared understanding of what success looks like. And you have to incent people to create time and motivate them through their metrics to collaborate together. Otherwise, it can't happen.
Amazing. Oh my goodness, this is a masterclass. Just for us to wrap up, because we are approaching the end, I cannot leave this podcast without talking about AI, right? So AI is definitely the hot topic of the moment. And this goes to you, Jen. So as we evolve with AI, which is happening by the hour, right?
Yeah.
So every new day, I'm sure that it happens to you as well. We have new companies coming in and approaching us with new solutions. that are amazing. I am a fan of
Yes.
AI. I have already incorporated AI into my routine, personally and professionally speaking. But I think that the question that remains is, what roles you humans connection and customer value is still play in the era of AI?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And I think it's something that every organization has to think about from, again, beginning to end, because it allows you to do more for the customer, right? When you think about AI, there's the aspect of building AI into the product itself, right? And helping the customer understand the role that that plays and how it's a differentiator for them. But then there's the role that AI can play in the job that each of us do, whether it's market research from the marketing side to understand and get even more detail in the problems the product can solve, the sales organization understanding the customer even more, right? We have at our fingertips an analyst that can go out and help us understand our customers in a way we never had before. And then on the back end, as the customer is hitting different problems, right? Some of it may be relevant to the product that you're supporting and what it can do, and other things may just be about that specific industry or vertical. And so a lot of success organizations and sales organizations verticalize, right, as they mature. And Kathleen, to your point, once you're a billion-dollar company, right, you do have verticals and industries that you're going after with experts in those verticals and industries. But in the meantime, you can use AI to become that expert so that as your organization is growing and as that customer is growing, you now can not only help them understand the value that your product can bring, but you can also be that consultant that can help them not only with the technology piece, but the business aspect of it, because you have all that information at your fingertips.
I love that, Jen. You mentioned this analyst, and I often call AI my very smart, never takes a break, never
Yes.
needs food, smart junior analyst. Um,
Yes.
Powerful, but only as good as the inputs, the data, and the context that we feed it.
Yeah.
And so, to your question, Camila, the human connection will always remain the differentiator.
Yeah.
Empathy, curiosity, and trust building can never be automated. We should not automate that out of the process. But I think that when done right, I'll give an example of one of my clients that uses AI to enhance their team's ability to analyze and predict,
Yes.
based on the customer intel, based on the trends that we're seeing in terms of issues raised in the product, to be able to predict and identify areas of opportunity. But I will say that humans will always drive that understanding and influence and value realization. Um, when done well, AI provides that precision and that raises that foundation, but the human insight will really be what drives the future growth engine. But we
Yeah.
can't do one without the other.
Yeah.
I can't agree more. And there's something you mentioned, which is your outcome or your output is going to be as good as your input,
Yeah.
right? And I'm
Exactly.
glad that you mentioned that it's your junior analyst, because that's how I see AI as well. So, of course, it helps with efficiency, with productivity, for sure. Kind of a collecting data that it would take a lot longer to collect, but you still need my input and knowing what I want to use that data for.
Yes.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
Gary, I see Gary's comment in the chat, that existing customers' experience drives net new opportunities. And I think this is where, that insight driven from automation, where, we can find those trends that may bubble up
Mhm.
and identify new opportunities is really important, and a really great data point that we need to ensure our CS and sales teams are leveraging on an ongoing basis.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, we are now definitely approaching the end. So, but before we wrap up, so Kathleen and Jen, what is the main takeaway you're going to leave, and how can people find you? Because this was such a amazing masterclass, and I'm sure that the people will be willing to connect and know more from you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the big thing is that importance of having that single North Star, right? Which is your customer and their success, and creating a consistent experience for them from when they learn about your product to when they start using your product. And as your customer evolves and it changes, and as their problem set may shift, and as your company expands and grows, making sure that you weave that in consistently together, right? Kathleen, to your point, with common language, common understanding, and then leveraging AI both in your product to make your product better, but then also as that junior analyst, because you are your customer's consultant and you're there to make them the hero. And so the more that you know as you help them on their journey, the better. And so that becomes really, really important. And lastly, I'd say making sure that everybody in your organization is aligned on that North Star and metriced accordingly, so that you don't inadvertently create conflicting metrics that will create the silos. You need to keep those silos from happening, because at the end, it's all about the customer who sits at the center of everything to make companies successful.
Amazing. So well said, Jen. And I'll build on that. There's maybe just two things, maybe three, that I want you to take away. One, do not underestimate the importance of human connection, both with your peers, as well as your customers. That human connection is critical. People buy from humans. They don't buy from, people that they or companies that they feel do not understand them. Two, I would say use automation and AI to make your teams smarter, but don't use it to automate out that connection. And then lastly, I would say that, growth has to be something that is shared by both CS and sales. And it all comes down to, what are the right signals? How can we unify our teams to look at the same signals, speak the same language, and then identify growth as our North Star with the customer value at the center? Camila, you also asked how people can find me. You can find me at either my website, which is cultivatecx.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn. Just search for Kathleen Rouse with a K. And I'm happy to discuss any of these topics in depth. Oh, and I'm also in Paris, by the way. So I just recently moved to Paris about 3 or 4 months ago. So if you're in Europe or in the France, the region of Paris, you can also connect with me in person.
Amazing. Oh, I can't thank you enough, Kathleen and Jen. This was such an insightful, enlightening, and valuable conversation as always. So thank you very much for coming to the show. This was Unified for Growth, how to business develop and customer success win together. So thank you very much. And I see you all in the next episode.
Thank you.